Hello, this is a discourse on the book called Christ in You, and we are starting with the 7th lesson in part 2. The lesson itself is called Dwell Deep, and we'll be referencing quotes from the A Course in Miracles that are relevant, and also from the Bible, that are ones that are referenced in this book. My name is Angel Christchild, and I'll be joined today by my friend, and we'll be starting this discussion. So welcome, friend.
Welcome. Yes, kind of a short lesson, but it's got some good content here. It's called Dwell Deep.
Yes.
And it continues in saying, you are spirit, soul, and body. The spirit, the innermost, is clothed upon by the soul. The body is the vehicle for manifestation. Your wholeness depends upon the one consciousness and the active cooperation of soul and body. Knowing only God brings into operation hidden laws, at present unknown to you. You develop spiritual powers, which hitherto lain dormant, and your whole being begins to live. Hearing, seeing, touch, and the power to communicate belong to the soul. They are transmitted to a denser body for divine purpose.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a remark too, because we do talk about near-death experience, and people's they come back talking about that. And I find it interesting because they do talk about the luminous body when they return from their near-death experience. And that seems to be relevant here. We have a luminous body when we're in the afterlife, and then we develop a denser body for a divine purpose. So that's an interesting idea. Let's go on.
Yeah, I'm trying to feel like how can we understand that? Like, one analogy I thought of was like, since people like to play video games, like you could play a role-playing game or a video game or what have you, and be a character in that game, but you yourself are not that. You're something much greater than that. You're just exploring a theme.
Yes.
And playing that game.
Right. Well, I think, you could compare it to that, with the big difference is that we're doing it for a divine purpose. So, but it's certainly, that's a good analogy in my mind. I think so. Just the divine purpose is important.
Yeah. So maybe the further deeper understanding would be like, the analogy breaks down quickly, but that it's like waking up to the reality of the fact that we're in kind of a game, an illusionary world here on Earth, and that our soul is really has something much greater for us. And then to really find our wholeness, we need to realize that connection with our greater part of ourselves, that's in spirit, that's our soul. And then I guess it changes how we play the video game. Do we play it by the ego's rules and game and our own like mind's desires and wants, or do we look to a higher purpose and try to find that
right
with ourselves to then express something much greater than our mind would have thought of?
Yes, I understand. Yeah, later on in this lesson, they talk about the brain, soul, spirit connection. I think that's also relevant. to the discussion.
All right. So the soul has great responsibilities, and everything depends upon her obedience to the Lord and Master and her transfer of spiritual desire to the outer body.
Mm.
More than this, by true living, you send forth spiritual vibrations, currents of blessing and healing, and all are helped by a radiant and pure environment.
Oh, that is a wonderful, that is definitely something that's important to A Course in Miracles as well. Also, just one side note there, I liked that they used the feminine when they were referring to spirit, which is quite interesting because back in those times, it wasn't normally done. So, yeah, I want to share something with you, friend, with respect to the true living, sending out spiritual vibrations and currents of blessings and healing from A Course in Miracles. And it says, you need not realize that healing comes to many brothers far across the world, as well as the ones you see nearby, as you send out the thoughts to bless the world. But you will sense your own release, and although you may not fully understand yet that you could never be released alone. So you sense your own release, and we don't need to know or realize that healing is being sent out from our own intentions. And another place in the Course, they say that the healing is sent out to thousands and thousands of people. So, and we are never released alone. So that comes from a workbook lesson, lesson 32, I loose the world from all I thought it was. And then we have another really nice quote that I thought I should share too, with respect to the true living and the vibrations. Through your holy relationship, reborn and blessed in every holy instant, you do not arrange, thousands will rise to heaven with you. And that's from the text called the Happy Dream. So we don't arrange that, but we do have a role in that. We have a role to play. It's something that we do by blessing others. This is a result. So that's pretty spectacular, isn't it, to be able to help thousands like that without hardly raising a finger. Well, that's not really true, but we have to put the work in, right?
It says, yeah, by true living, you send forth these vibrations and blessing and healing. So it's almost like we aren't, I don't know, some like,
Yes.
super famous, like TV personality or something, or what have you. You don't have to be like,
Yeah, you don't have to have a big ministry with thousands and millions of dollars worth of houses. And right. Good point.
right? Yeah, you just have to be in connection with your soul and just living that way.
Hold on one moment, please. What technical difficulty we're having here. Oh boy. Yes, I see that perspective.
Yeah. Well, continuing here, it says every spiritual desire expressed through the outer body goes on and obeys a higher law. It is never lost. Never mind if you do not see results. I tell you, the result of every noble thought expressed has far-reaching effects, and you will know one day that the faintest longing desire has been satisfied.
Isn't that so encouraging? You know, it's like our lives are so transparent. We're all one being. We're one. We are one in thought as well. And it's really, I find it very encouraging to hear that. And I've got something I want to share through A Course in Miracles. It says, through your holy relationship, reborn and blessed in every holy instant you do not arrange, thousands will rise to heaven with you. That's from the Happy Dream. I just read that, but I guess I needed to read it again because it was so good. Anyway, what I wanted to say was, thus, with respect to every spiritual desire expressed through the outer body, goes on and obeys a higher law and is never lost. From A Course in Miracles, it says, there's no miracle you cannot have when you desire healing. But there is no miracle that can be given unless you want it. So that's from a chapter in the text called Changeless Reality. So you have to want it and express it. And there is no miracle you cannot have, it says.
Well, that's empowering to know that it's almost like by our just intention of like maybe wanting to send a prayer out to like, whether it be to like people in the world or people who are struggling or whatever, that it's not lost. It's just the pure intent is all it takes. The faith that it's of good intent and good
Right.
meaning. It's just since we're all one being, it's essentially we're just blessing ourselves.
Well, it's easy enough to put out bad intention. That happens a lot. In fact, that's how we live our lives. We're putting out unhappy intentions. So just the fact that we can help so many by having these good intentions, that's extremely encouraging and motivating, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah. So when you meditate or pray, it is the soul and not the body that opens to the spirit. Mind wandering or lack of earnestness means that the brain is not cooperating with the soul. See to it that you are definite and think, speak, and act from the innermost of yourself. Your soul is your real identity. It is you.
Wonderful.
The soul thinks, breathes, acts from the spirit, and should make perfect the outer body. Wherever this is not so, the soul has failed.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt. I wanted to speak about an interesting passage from A Course in Miracles that I thought was relevant to this. The soul thinks, breathes, and acts from spirit, should make perfect the body. So it says in the Course, be still an instant. Underneath the sound of the harsh and bitter strivings and defeat of this illusionary world, there is a voice that speaks to you of me with capital M. Hear this an instant and you will be healed. Hear this an instant and you will have been saved. And that comes from a Song of Prayer, section called Healing, the Holiness of Healing. That's a big promise.
It's saying that it flows from a higher source. All this that we are experiencing, basically, it's manifesting through us, and so we should make good that connection with our own soul.
I think it also says that the harsh and bitter striving and defeat, there's a voice, and to me that means that the voice is speaking to us and we need to hear it. So we need to pause and listen to be heard. for the voice to be heard.
Yeah, a lot of times he says in the book, I think multiple places, that silence is the place where you can hear if you kind of quiet that mind. Sit in silence for a little bit to hear your true
Thoughts.
thoughts. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the soul thinks, breathes, acts from the spirit, and should make perfect the outer body. Whenever this is not so, the soul has failed in its obedience to spirit. If this disobedience takes place, you will find that the passing out of the flesh does not mean that the soul will then function freely. For disuse of the spiritual medium means coma, arrested growth, sleep. And then with an exclamation point, awake, thou that sleepest, Christ dwells within.
So really we're sleepwalking through our lives and not really, we're so busy with the illusion, with all the trappings and the wealth and the, desires of the illusion, that we're just sleepwalking through our spiritual life. And when we get to the other side, we haven't been prepared for that whatsoever. So, I often wonder, in the near-death experience, people are sent back, and they say the spirits or Jesus, whoever meets them at the other side, says there's more that you have to learn, there's more you have to do. And they don't get to know right at that time what more they had to do. But I start to wonder now if they are given a taste of the afterlife and then they go back with that information underneath their belt, so to speak, and they learn something entirely different, because a lot of people who had near-death experiences, their lives completely change and they're no longer interested in doing the work that they did. They're more interested in exploring their spiritual self, sharing about their near-death experience and helping others. So that makes sense, doesn't it, friend?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
It must be one of the mediums that, it's funny, it took me this long to realize that, but it must be one of the ways that people become spiritual seekers, even though they weren't before they had their near-death experience. God reaches out to people in many, many ways, many different ways.
Yeah, it would be a really powerful wake-up call to to die for a little bit and then come back and be like, oh, I need to have some spiritual awakening in my life.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's a powerful verse too, associated with that word awake, an exclamation mark. Ephesians 5:14.
Uh-huh.
This is why it is said, wake up, sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's kind of a near death kind of a way of thinking of it, is kind of rising from the dead, but you're rising to an awareness of Christ.
Yes.
We don't have to necessarily have a near death experience to realize that we can wake up right now.
That's right. We don't have to, but it would be fun. Well, it's not fun for some people because they come back to a life where they've been hurt and injured. Lots of people have to work their way back. Other people come back completely healed from cancer that they had before that. It's so interesting, all the varieties of experiences from people that have these near-death experiences. Very interesting. Okay, shall we go on?
So, when you have ceased to need the body, you will give back the atoms, purified and transmuted by the divine life. Do not repress life, but express it. There is nothing either in or out of the flesh that can hinder the disciple who is at one with the will of God.
Well, there's something interesting from the course I want to share. And, I think that when the writer says express life, he means the true life, not a fake life that we're living now, the illusionary life, but true life.
Mm.
Yeah. And so from A Course in Miracles, it says, the distractions of the ego may seem to interfere with your learning, but the ego has no power to distract you unless you give it the power to do so.
Mm.
The ego's voice is a hallucination. And that's from the text, a section called The Journey Back, the Direction of the Curriculum. So we spend most of our lives listening to an illusion of our own making in an illusionary world. And the voice we listen to is a hallucination. And in this section, they're calling upon us to listen to God's voice and hear God's voice so we can come back to real life.
Could the illusion of life and the ego and all that, could that be kind of likened to an addiction in a way, where we're addicted to this kind of merry-go-round of trying to satisfy the ego? Whereas this is kind of like, they call it, sometimes people get the alcohol addiction, they go to this Alcoholics Anonymous or whatever, and then they realize, oh, I was just kind of covering up something that I was not really acknowledging about my life, and I was using this alcohol or whatever as my outlet, and but that's not really satisfying me. I need to kind of wake up to what's going on in my life, type thing. So maybe that's an analogy.
Yeah, that's a good, very good analogy. Very good. Because we have so much pain underneath, and a lot of it comes from quite often it's from situations that we had to deal with when we were very young, or it could be any time of our lives, really. But underneath that, a lot of those situations come because we believe in an illusion, which is trying to teach us that we're separate and apart from God, which in fact is not true. So, I mean, really, all the pain and heartbreak and tragedy and loss that we experience in this world, it seems real and it feels real, but it's not real. What's real is God's love. So, to be able to reach out to God and hear his thoughts and feel his love is a really good step forward in seeing the illusion as it truly is.
It can only be beneficial for our ability to heal ourselves and others, and send out blessings that bless others, which bless ourselves, and
Yes.
put things into a perspective.
So with that, we'll close this section, and we'll look forward next week to speaking about the next lesson, which should be quite interesting, I feel. And soon we'll be coming up to part 3 as well, which will be amazing. But right now we're in part 2, and the next lesson will be the 8th lesson, Unfoldment from Within. So that should be a really interesting one, and it's quite involved as well. Unfoldment from Within. So I hope you join me next time, friend. And thank you. And thank you to the listeners. And may God bless you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.